Alex stepped off the shuttle and onto the cold, metallic surface of the Vorthari homeworld, his breath catching in the air. The atmosphere was thick with tension, and the towering, spiked architecture around him looked more like something out of a nightmare than a peaceful diplomatic mission. The Vorthari were known for their immense strength, their advanced technology, and most of all, their deep contempt for humanity. It had been nearly 2 centuries since humans first made contact with the Vorthari, and despite the years of negotiations, they still regarded humans as weak, insignificant creatures, fit only to serve. Alex had been selected for this mission because of his calm demeanor, his knack for understanding people, and his refusal to back down. He had been told that the peace talks could be a breakthrough for humanity, that this could be their chance to prove themselves as worthy of a place among the stars. But deep down, Alex felt the weight of their previous failures. He knew how much was riding on these talks. The city was silent, save for the distant hum of machinery. He was flanked by 2 Vorthari guards, each towering over him with their black, spiked armor and glowing red eyes. Their presence was unsettling, but Alex kept his head high. He had faced worse: alien threats, political betrayals, and the harsh realities of his mission. But nothing had prepared him for the cold reception he received when they entered the council hall. The grand hall was filled with Vorthari leaders, all seated on high thrones of obsidian, their eyes fixed on Alex with disdain. They didn't even rise to greet him. Instead, they whispered among themselves, clearly unimpressed by the human delegation. Alex stood tall at the center of the room, aware of how small he must appear compared to the towering figures around him. His gaze flicked to the high-ranking officer standing beside him, Zara, a Vorthari officer who had been assigned to guide him through the proceedings. Zara was sharp-eyed, her expression unreadable, her posture perfect. Alex could tell she was no ordinary soldier. As he prepared to address the council, his heart thumped in his chest. He cleared his throat, but before he could speak, a voice cut through the silence. "Why should we even listen to you, human?" A Vorthari elder sneered from his high seat. "Your race is nothing more than a pest, scurrying about in the dirt of your insignificant homeworld." The council chuckled, a low rumble of amusement that only made Alex more uncomfortable. He had faced insults before, but this felt different. This was a species that had conquered galaxies, and yet they saw humans as nothing more than an inconvenience. But Alex didn't flinch. He had learned that in moments like this, silence often spoke louder than words. He met the eyes of the elder and said, "The fact that we're standing here, negotiating for peace, proves that we are not as insignificant as you believe." His voice was steady, calm, and it seemed to catch the attention of the council for a moment. They exchanged glances, but there was no response. Zara, who had been standing at his side, gave him a brief, approving nod, though her expression remained unreadable. Alex took a deep breath and continued. He had studied the Vorthari culture extensively, and he knew that pride was their greatest weakness. He could see it in the way they carried themselves, the way they glared down at him. He spoke of humanity's potential, how humans had survived in a galaxy filled with dangers, how they had thrived on innovation, and how they had faced adversity without losing their spirit. He spoke of peace, of cooperation, and of the future they could build together. His words were simple but sincere, his voice carrying with the weight of everything that had brought him to this moment. But when he finished speaking, the silence that followed was even more suffocating than before. The council sat still, unmoved by his words. One of the Vorthari leaders, a woman with sharp, angular features and glowing purple skin, leaned forward. "You speak of peace," she said coldly. "But we know nothing of your kind's true nature. How can we trust the word of a species that has proven so weak in the face of war?" Before Alex could respond, Zara spoke. Her voice was low, but it cut through the air with a sharpness that commanded attention. "You misunderstand," she said, her tone firm yet calm. "Peace is not the absence of war. It is the courage to face the unknown, to build something better from the ashes of destruction." The council stared at Zara in silence, and Alex couldn't help but wonder what drove her to speak so passionately. Zara wasn't just any officer. There was a fire in her eyes, a fire that had clearly survived the brutality of the Vorthari regime, but it was a fire Alex couldn't quite understand. Zara's words seemed to hang in the air for a moment before the council broke their silence. "Enough of this nonsense," another elder said, his voice full of contempt. "You humans think too highly of yourselves." "This meeting is over." A chill swept through the room as the council members began to rise, signaling the end of the peace talks. Alex felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He had failed. But just before the meeting could fully break apart, Zara stepped forward, her voice urgent and sharp. "We must leave now," she whispered to Alex, her hand on his arm, urging him toward the exit. "It's not safe here anymore." Before Alex could process her words, Zara turned to face the council.
"You may think yourselves invincible, but you're about to see what humanity is truly capable of."
As the doors of the council hall slammed shut behind them, Alex turned to Zara, confusion written on his face. "What just happened?" he asked, his voice low. Zara looked at him, her eyes filled with something he couldn't quite place. "You've set things in motion, human," she said quietly, her words almost haunting. "Everything you've done, everything you've said, it's not just about peace anymore. It's about survival. And now, you're a part of something much bigger than you realize." Her eyes locked onto his, and for the first time, Alex saw a flicker of something more than professionalism in her gaze. It was fear. Fear that echoed his own. She stepped closer to him, her voice barely above a whisper. "You've made a choice, Alex, and now we must face the consequences." Before he could respond, Zara turned sharply, her gaze scanning the corridor. They were not alone, and Alex could feel it in his bones, a storm that was brewing. A storm that had started the moment he stepped onto this alien world. And just as they turned the corner, Zara stopped and whispered the words that would haunt him for the rest of his life. "This is because of you, human." The weight of her words hit him like a hammer. What had he done? What was coming next? But Zara didn't give him the time to ask more questions. She pulled him forward, her pace quickening, urgency in her every movement. As Alex followed, he couldn't shake the feeling that the galaxy was shifting beneath his feet, and he was standing at the very center of it. Zara pulled Alex through the narrow corridors of the Vorthari Council building, her footsteps quick and purposeful. Alex, struggling to keep up, could feel his heart pounding in his chest. He still couldn't fully understand what was happening. One moment, he had been speaking about peace, trying to convince the Vorthari leaders that humanity deserved a place in the galaxy. The next, he was running for his life, with Zara warning him of some impending danger he could barely comprehend. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice strained from the effort to match Zara's pace. "What did you mean back there?" Zara didn't answer immediately. She kept her eyes focused on the path ahead, her expression hard as stone. They reached a narrow door at the end of the hall, and she pressed her hand against it, activating a hidden mechanism. The door slid open silently, and they stepped into a small, dimly lit room. It was a stark contrast to the grand, imposing structure outside. The room was filled with screens and equipment that hummed quietly in the background, though its purpose was unclear to Alex. She turned to face him, her eyes sharp with urgency. "Alex, listen carefully. You've made things far more complicated than you realize." Alex was about to ask what she meant when Zara cut him off. "The Vorthari, those in power, are not interested in peace. They never were. They want to enslave your people, and you just gave them the perfect excuse to do so."
He blinked in confusion, but I know what you thought.
"You believed the Vorthari would see reason. You thought if you showed them how strong humanity could be, how much we could offer, they'd back down. But they don't care about your strength. They care about power. And you, Alex, You've given them a reason to believe humans are a threat. A dangerous one. Alex felt a sinking feeling in his chest.
So, all of this was a mistake?
Zara's eyes softened for a moment,
But only a moment. No, you didn't know.
but now you're here, and you have to understand. Your actions have consequences. The Vorthari Council is not interested in negotiating.
They want war, and they want your people to be their first target.
Alex could feel his stomach tighten. But why? Why would they want to go to war with humanity? What could we possibly have that they want? Zara gave him a look, as if the answer were painfully obvious. You don't understand the Vorthari. They are conquerors. They've been at the top of the food chain for centuries, but they've always known that their empire is fragile. They've always feared something they've never been able to explain. Fear of what? Alex asked, his voice barely a whisper. Zara took a deep breath, her gaze drifting to the floor. Fear of humans. Alex shook his head, unable to believe what he was hearing. But we're nothing compared to them. We have no advanced technology. We don't even have weapons that could rival theirs. That's where you're wrong, Zara replied, her voice a little sharper now.
Humans have something the Vorthari can't understand. You have resilience.
The Vorthari don't see that as strength. They see it as a threat. Alex still didn't fully understand, but he could see the seriousness in Zara's eyes. This wasn't just about diplomacy anymore. The fate of humanity might already be sealed. And it had all started with his words. Words he had thought would unite them all. Zara paced across the room, clearly agitated.
I'm not saying you were wrong to try, Alex.
But now you need to realize that this isn't just a political failure. This is about survival. What do you mean? What are we supposed to do now? Alex asked, his voice rising in frustration. He felt a wave of helplessness wash over him. Zara turned back to him, her eyes softening once more. There are factions within the Vorthari. Not all of them want war. Some of them, people like me, want peace. But those in power won't allow it. They see humans as a risk, and they want to eliminate that risk before it grows. But we're not a threat, Alex shouted, his hands trembling at his sides. How do we stop them if they're determined to wipe us out? Zara paused for a moment, and Alex could see the conflict in her eyes. There's only one way to stop them. We need to expose the truth. The truth? Alex asked, his voice quieter now. Zara nodded. We need to show the Vorthari that the power they fear in humanity isn't something we're using against them, but it's also something we can't control. The Vorthari have been hiding something, Alex. Something they've kept secret for generations. What is it? Alex asked, his curiosity piqued despite the rising sense of danger. Zara glanced around the room before leaning in closer. The core of eons, she whispered, as though the name alone might be enough to carry some hidden power. It's an ancient relic, one that the Vorthari have kept hidden from the galaxy. It's the source of their strength, and it's the thing they fear the most. Alex's brow furrowed in confusion. But if it's so important, why haven't they used it? They can't, Zara replied, shaking her head. The core of eons is a powerful artifact, but it doesn't belong to them. It belongs to humanity. Alex felt a jolt of disbelief run through him. You're telling me this artifact? It's ours? But how? Zara's expression grew more serious. It's not something I can explain in a few words, but the Vorthari know the truth. They've known for centuries. The core of eons is a gift left behind by a long-lost civilization, one that was once allied with humanity. They feared that, one day, humans would rediscover it, and when that day comes, the galaxy will change forever. So why don't we just take it from them? If it's so important, then we should. No, it's not that simple, Zara interrupted. The Vorthari are not going to let us take it. They will do everything in their power to prevent that from happening. And if we make a move to try, we'll be seen as a direct threat. We need to act carefully. Alex's mind was racing. He was trying to process all of this information, how everything had changed in a matter of hours, how his attempts at peace had opened a door he couldn't close. So, what do we do now? He asked, his voice steady but tinged with the weight of everything he had learned. Zara walked over to a console in the corner and began typing swiftly, bringing up a map of the Vorthari capital. We need to get to the core of eons before they can activate it. Once it's fully operational, the Vorthari will have the power to reshape the galaxy. They'll control everything. Alex felt a cold wave of dread wash over him. The stakes had just become much higher. But it wasn't just about saving humanity anymore. It was about saving the entire galaxy from a race of conquerors who had no intention of letting anyone stand in their way. We need to move fast, Zara said, her voice resolute. But how? Alex asked. We're not exactly in a position to march in and take what we want. Zara's lips curved into a faint, almost bitter smile. We're not alone in this, Alex. There are those who want to see the Vorthari overthrown. There's a rebellion brewing within their ranks, and if we can unite the right people, we might just have a chance. Alex didn't fully understand everything Zara had said, but he knew one thing for sure. This wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning, and he had to be ready for whatever came next. Alex couldn't shake the words Zara had spoken earlier. The core of eons, an ancient relic that didn't belong to the Vorthari, but to humanity. How could that be possible? It seemed so far-fetched, yet Zara's seriousness told him she wasn't lying. He paced the small room, trying to process everything. The Vorthari feared humanity not because of their military might or technology, but because of something far deeper, something ancient. The more he thought about it, the more the pieces began to fall into place. There had to be something more to this core of eons, something that could explain the Vorthari's obsessive desire to control it. Zara was busy at the console, her fingers flying over the holographic keyboard as she accessed restricted files. Alex couldn't help but watch her, impressed by how calm and focused she was despite everything. It was clear she knew this world much better than he did, and for the first time since arriving on the Vorthari homeworld, Alex felt grateful for her presence.
You're sure we can get to the core? Alex asked, his voice tinged with uncertainty.
He was beginning to realize just how dangerous their mission was. Zara didn't look up from the console. We don't have a choice, Alex. If we don't act soon, the Vorthari will use the core to destroy everything in their path. And if they succeed, humanity won't have a future. Alex's stomach twisted at the thought. So we need to get to it before they do? Exactly, Zara replied, finally turning her gaze toward him. Her expression was unreadable, but there was a fire in her eyes that told Alex she wasn't backing down. But we're not just taking it. We're going to expose the truth. Once the galaxy knows the Vorthari have been hiding the core and keeping humanity's legacy secret, they'll lose all their power. That's the only way to bring them down. Alex nodded, although he wasn't entirely sure how they were going to pull that off. The Vorthari were a powerful, ruthless race. They wouldn't go down easily. But something about Zara's conviction made him believe they had a chance, however slim it might be. Zara continued, her voice low. I've contacted a few people on the inside. There's a group of rebels who have been working against the Vorthari's leadership for years. They're our best hope of getting past the Vorthari's defenses. But we need to move quickly. Time is running out. Alex was about to ask more questions when a sudden noise interrupted him. A low hum that reverberated through the walls. Zara's eyes narrowed as she stood, swiftly making her way to the window. It's starting, she muttered under her breath. What's starting? Alex asked, his voice rising in panic. Zara turned to him with a cold look. The Vorthari are activating the core. We don't have much time. Without another word, Zara grabbed Alex by the arm and pulled him toward the door. He had no choice but to follow her, his heart racing with fear. The corridors outside were silent, eerily so, but Alex could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. They moved quickly, weaving through the dimly lit hallways of the council building. "This way," Zara said, leading him down a narrow staircase. The building seemed to stretch on forever, each turn feeling like it brought them further into enemy territory. They passed several Vorthari guards, but Zara gave them nothing more than a brief glance, and they parted to let her pass. It was clear she had influence here, perhaps more than Alex had realized. "Where are we going?" Alex asked, trying to keep up with her brisk pace. His mind was still spinning from the revelation of the core of eons, but the urgency of the situation was impossible to ignore. "To the rebels," Zara replied. "They'll help us get to the core, but we need to be careful. The Vorthari don't take betrayal lightly. They'll do anything to protect the core and their power." They continued moving through the building, and Alex began to feel like they were in some kind of maze. The walls were cold and gray, the air thick with tension. Every step seemed to lead them deeper into the heart of enemy territory. He couldn't help but feel a sense of dread hanging over them. What if they were walking straight into a trap? Zara's grip on his arm tightened slightly, as if sensing his unease. "Stay close," she murmured, her voice steady and calm. "Trust me." Alex nodded, trying to push aside his growing anxiety. He wanted to trust her. He had no choice but to trust her. Finally, they reached a small, hidden elevator. Zara punched in a code, and the door slid open. Inside was a small team of rebels, their faces grim and focused. They looked like soldiers, but there was something different about them, something that told Alex they had been fighting for much longer than anyone realized. "This is Alex," Zara said, gesturing toward him. "He's here to help us stop the Vorthari." One of the rebels, a tall man with sharp features and dark eyes, nodded at Alex. "We know who you are. The sooner we get to the core, the better. But we need to move fast. The Vorthari are already on high alert." The elevator doors slid shut, and Alex felt a jolt as they descended into the depths of the building. The air was thick with tension, and every second felt like an eternity. He could hear the faint sounds of footsteps echoing in the distance, the quiet hum of machinery, and the muffled voices of the Vorthari as they moved about the building. When the elevator finally stopped, the doors opened to reveal a hidden passageway, dimly lit and lined with metal. Zara and the rebels led the way, their movements swift and quiet. They seemed to know exactly where they were going, and Alex followed them closely, his mind still racing. "This is it," Zara whispered, as they stopped in front of a heavy door. She turned to Alex. "Behind this door is the core. The Vorthari have it locked down, but we can get through if we're careful." Alex nodded, trying to steady his breathing. His heart was pounding in his chest, his palms slick with sweat. He had never imagined he would be standing here, facing the unknown with everything he cared about hanging in the balance. Zara motioned for the rebels to stand back, and she began working on the door's security system. The silence in the room was deafening, and Alex couldn't help but feel like they were being watched. Every second felt like it could be their last. Finally, with a soft click, the door slid open. The room beyond was dimly lit, filled with strange glowing symbols and intricate machinery. In the center of the room stood the core, a massive pulsating crystal that seemed to hum with energy. It was unlike anything Alex had ever seen. "This is it," Zara whispered, her voice filled with awe. "The core of eons."
Alex stepped forward, his breath catching in his throat.
He could feel the power emanating from the crystal, a force unlike anything he had ever experienced. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. As he reached out to touch it, a voice echoed through the room. "You shouldn't have come here, human." Alex spun around, his heart pounding. Standing in the doorway was a Vorthari soldier, her eyes glowing red with anger. She was tall and imposing, her armor gleaming in the dim light. "You won't leave this place alive," the soldier said, her voice cold and unwavering. "The Vorthari will make sure of that." Zara stepped forward, her eyes narrowing. "We'll see about that." Alex felt his pulse race as the soldier raised her weapon. This was it, the moment he had been dreading. There was no turning back now. But in that moment, he realized something. No matter what happened, he wasn't alone. He had Zara and the rebels by his side. Together, they might just have a chance. The Vorthari soldier stepped forward, her weapon raised, her eyes burning with a cold hatred. Alex could feel his heart pounding in his chest as the soldier's gaze shifted between him and Zara. The weight of the moment settled in, and for the first time since stepping onto this alien world, Alex realized just how much was at stake. This wasn't just about diplomacy anymore. This was about survival, for him, for humanity, and for the future of the galaxy. Zara stepped in front of him, her stance firm. Her voice was steady as she spoke to the Vorthari soldier.
"You're too late. The core is ours now."
"And you can't stop us!" the soldier sneered, her eyes narrowing with fury. "You think you can just walk in here and take what doesn't belong to you?" she spat. "You're nothing but a child, playing with forces you don't understand." Alex's fingers tightened around the handle of the blaster Zara had given him earlier. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't even a fighter. But the weight of the situation pressed on him, and he realized he had no choice. He had to act. Zara took a step forward, her voice cutting through the tension. "It's not your choice to make. The core was always meant for humanity. We're here to reclaim what was stolen from us." The soldier raised her weapon, her eyes filled with fury. "You will not leave this room alive," she hissed. "The Vorthari will make sure of that." For a moment, Alex thought the soldier might fire. But before she could make her move, a sudden explosion shook the room. The walls cracked, and the ground trembled beneath their feet. The soldier staggered, thrown off balance by the shockwave. The door behind them flew open, and a group of rebels rushed into the room, their weapons raised. The soldier turned, but before she could react, one of the rebels fired, hitting her square in the chest. She let out a scream, falling to the floor in a heap. Alex's breath caught in his throat as the room filled with the sounds of battle. The rebels moved quickly, securing the area and neutralizing the Vorthari guards who had been stationed nearby. Zara turned to Alex, her face a mixture of determination and relief. "We need to move," she said, her voice urgent. "The Vorthari will be here soon. We don't have much time." Alex nodded, his mind racing. He could still feel the hum of the core behind him, its energy pulsing like a heartbeat. He took one last look at the massive crystal, knowing that it was the key to everything. It had been hidden for so long, buried away by the Vorthari in a desperate attempt to control the galaxy. But now, it was in their hands. Zara led the way, her movements swift and precise as she signaled for the rebels to follow. Alex stayed close behind, his thoughts a whirlwind. They had to get the core out of here, and they had to do it before the Vorthari could launch a full-scale assault. But as they made their way down the narrow corridor, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. They reached a hidden elevator at the far end of the hall, and Zara quickly punched in the code. The doors slid open with a soft hiss, and they piled inside, the rebels taking up positions around the small space. As the elevator descended, the sounds of distant explosions reverberated through the walls. The Vorthari were not going to give up easily. Zara's voice broke through the tension. "We're almost there. Once we get to the surface, we'll have to make our way to the extraction point. The fleet is waiting for us." Alex nodded, trying to steady his breath. The adrenaline was starting to fade, replaced by the cold reality of what they were facing. If the Vorthari were as powerful as Zara said, they wouldn't stop until they had the core back. And if they couldn't stop them, humanity's future would be at risk. The elevator reached its destination with a soft chime, and the doors opened to reveal a dark, narrow hallway. The rebels moved quickly, their eyes scanning the area for any signs of danger. Zara led the way, her expression focused and unyielding. Alex felt a chill run down his spine as they made their way through the underground tunnels. The walls were lined with strange markings, symbols that Alex didn't understand. The air was thick with the scent of dust and metal, and the only sound was the soft echo of their footsteps.
This way, Zara said, pointing to a door at the far end of the tunnel. The extraction point is just beyond that door.
We're almost there.
But as they approached the door, a loud crash echoed through the hallway. Alex spun around, his heart racing. The sound of footsteps grew louder, and he realized they weren't alone. The Vorthari were closing in. "Get ready," Zara muttered, signaling for the rebels to take cover. The rebels quickly spread out, picking positions behind pillars and crates as they prepared for the inevitable confrontation. Alex felt the weight of the blaster in his hand, but his mind was focused on one thing: the core. They had to protect it, no matter the cost. The door to the hallway burst open, and a group of Vorthari soldiers poured into the room. Their armor gleamed in the dim light, their weapons raised. Zara stepped forward, her eyes flashing with determination. "This is it," she said, her voice cold and steady. "Hold your ground." The rebels fired first, their shots ringing out as they took down the first few soldiers. Alex fired too, his hand shaking as he aimed for the nearest target. He had never felt more alive, more terrified. Every shot, every movement was a matter of life or death. But he couldn't let that stop him. He had come too far to turn back now. The Vorthari retaliated, their weapons roaring to life as they fired back. Alex ducked behind a nearby pillar, his heart racing. The air was thick with the sound of gunfire, the bright flashes of laser blasts lighting up the dark corridor. Zara moved with deadly precision, taking down Vorthari soldiers one by one. It felt like an eternity, but slowly, the tide began to turn. The rebels fought with everything they had, their shots finding their mark as they whittled down the Vorthari forces. Alex's breath came in ragged gasps as he fired again and again, the adrenaline surging through his veins. Finally, after what felt like hours, the last of the Vorthari soldiers fell. Zara looked around, her expression unreadable as she surveyed the aftermath of the battle. The rebels were panting, their faces bloodied and bruised, but they had succeeded. The Vorthari were beaten. "We're not done yet," Zara said, her voice sharp. "Let's move." They didn't have time to celebrate. The Vorthari would send reinforcements, and the clock was ticking. Zara led the way through the final door, and Alex followed, his mind focused on the task ahead. Beyond the door, the surface of the Vorthari homeworld stretched out before them, a dark landscape lit only by the glow of distant stars. In the distance, the rebel ships waited, ready to take them to safety. But as they stepped out into the open, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone. He turned around, his eyes scanning the area, and then he saw it. Dozens of Vorthari ships descending from the sky, their engines roaring as they approached. "We're not going to make it," one of the rebels muttered, his voice full of dread. But Zara didn't hesitate. "We don't have a choice. We're going to fight until the end." Alex nodded, his heart filled with resolve. He had come this far. There was no turning back now. The fight wasn't over, but humanity had a chance. As long as they stood together, they would keep fighting, keep pushing forward, for humanity, for the future. The Vorthari may have thought they could control the galaxy, but Alex knew something they didn't. Humanity's resilience was its greatest strength, and together they would fight for their place in the stars.